You ever feel like you're being followed?
So here we go with an overarching question here, because we first met Saul back in, I believe, season 2 of Breaking Bad. And so just what's been your perception of the character Saul from the first time that you met him on the page prepping for that season, as opposed to where we are now? What's the character? How has the character changed, I guess, from then to now?
Are you talking from Breaking Bad or from Better Call Saul
From
season one?
Breaking Bad, from the very beginning of
Well,
season 2 of Breaking Bad.
I mean, he's a much richer, deeper, more, I'd say, relatable character. He was very fun to watch in Breaking Bad and fun to play. But he was very thin characterization. In my mind, he was a guy who was putting on this front. As he states, he was trying to get the homeboys, trying to get low-level and mid-level drug dealers, and hoping for a high-level one. And then he went to strip clubs and played golf occasionally on the weekends. He was an empty guy, an empty life. And then they invented Jimmy McGill for Better Call Saul, and he was a guy with people that he loved, a challenging history of trying very hard to do the right thing, trying to be a good person, frustrated by life, capable of some things, and a hard worker, but just couldn't find any place that he felt vindicated and respected and appreciated. And so I relate to him a lot more. It's just a great thickening and building of character. The difference is so big. The character I played in Breaking Bad was almost a sketch level, comedy characterization.
Yeah, and I do admire the guy's work ethic, especially when you watch Better Call Saul. And so, as we get into this season 6, can you just give us sort of maybe the tenor of the conversations between you and creator Vince as far as themes go? Like what are you looking to achieve here as we enter into this final season?
Well, to be fair, Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan created the show together. And Peter, in many ways, oversaw the final 4 seasons of Better Call Saul. Vince fully rejoined the show in the final season. But so much had been handed to Peter that any decisions that were made for this character were definitely the two of them, if not even more loaded towards Peter. I had a request from season 1 on that they consider the idea that sometimes people learn the right lessons from bad experiences and trauma and challenges in their life. My feeling is that Walter White kind of learned the wrong lessons. He became more egotistical. He pursued his weaker and more lesser demons, lesser angels at the very least, but maybe demons. And that's where he found himself landing is in his worst instincts. And I was just suggesting that maybe after all that they had planned for Saul, and that maybe the character could grow in a beneficial way. And I wasn't sure if Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, who would make that final choice, felt that they wanted to tell that story, or that was a legitimate story to tell. So now that I've seen where it ends up, and I think I influenced them a bit by talking about that very question. We created a character who's at his heart, I think, more likable than Walter White. We certainly understand the things that drive him more, and he seemed to have tried a lot harder than Walter White did to be a good person. He made a very real concerted effort, and we watched him do it on the show, to win his brother over, to be, becoming a lawyer, to do the right thing. And then his brother iced him out of the White Shoe Law Firm, and he was just in all kinds of He was just sad and torn up by that more than anything. Um, so all I'll say is I talk to them about a character and a human being growing and learning positive lessons, and I can't tell you where we end up, and I wouldn't say it's a simplistic choice, but I think maybe they were affected by my hopes and concerns that, and my pitch that at least partially, sometimes people can learn the right lessons from the challenges of life.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm speaking in such generic terms, but
well, you have to,
I
because
mean,
you want to preserve our excitement and the secrecy around season 6. And I just wonder if part of Jimmy's desire to sort of grow in a different way, to be a redeemable character in some sense, is related to his relationship with Kim Wexler, because you watch how great Ray Seahorn is at playing that role, and your two's dynamic. I mean, we hear her say in the season 6 trailer, "Do you think we're wicked?" So I wonder if part of Jimmy is maybe looking out for her, or maybe concerned that she is going down an irredeemable path.
yeah, he's always thinking about that. He's always concerned for her, and he does worry that he is taking her to a bad place. But of course, at the end of season 5, we see this moment where it looks like she is igniting the more dangerous choice in the pursuit of danger and ethical compromise. But we'll see. I can't tell you. She's definitely a part. They have the most fun when they're working together on a scam.
It's very inspiring to a lot of the couples out there to just have a fun little time doing some scam at a restaurant or something, seeing what happens in Better Call Saul. But one of my favorite things about watching how the show is laid out is your budding rivalry with Howard. And we see a reference to that in the season 6 trailer too. As a sports fan, I kind of look at it as like the Lakers-Kings NBA rivalry from the early 2000s, where you have a clear underdog and a clear champion. So how much fun has that been to play that underdog character going up against the big champ?
I love it. I can relate to that partially. I'm not a person who carries resentments. Um, I see great value in dropping them and throwing them away. So Jimmy is very different from me in his willingness to hold on to hurt feelings and look for someone to blame. And yet I do relate to his frustration and feeling that Howard has had it easy and should be taken down a peg or two. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, what really hooked me into season 5 was right off the bat was that scene where we're watching Gene and he's just trying to mind his own business, sitting on the bench at the mall, and then somebody approaches him and he's been outed, so to speak. And so when he makes that phone call to the late great Robert Forster's character, what do you think is going through Jimmy's mind at that moment when he has that change of heart, when he's prepared to just move on again, but then he says, "No, I'm staying here"? What's your take on what's going on in Jimmy's noggin?
I think that it's probably really hard to hide in a false name and live a quiet life if you're a outgoing, colorful personality like Jimmy. I don't think that's an easy life to live that he's been living in hiding as Gene Takavic. And I think he's had enough. And he realizes I can keep running, but it doesn't matter how much money I've saved up. It doesn't. What am I protecting? This life is not worth protecting. That's what I think he's thinking. Because even just playing him in the moments that you act the scene of a guy who is quiet, shut down, literally like doesn't want to talk too much, doesn't want people to notice him, can't share who he is, especially a voluble character like Jimmy, who's got to shut himself off completely. That would not be an easy thing to keep going for years. And I
Yeah.
don't know, when you ask yourself, oh, I got to shut it down. I got to go home. I can't go out. I can't meet anyone. Why am I doing this? So I can keep doing this? I don't know if that's worth it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah, I was wondering how a comic would handle being in the witness protection program, because it's like at some point you just feel the need. You're gonna do an open mic at some point. Doesn't matter where
Yeah,
you
listen,
are.
I met Abby Hoffman. He gave a speech at my school. He had a book out, and he was in hiding from the FBI, and he had plastic surgery and everything. And the next time he sort of came to public consciousness, he was on the front page of his local paper because he was leading a protest movement to clean up the river in town. So the point is, here he is in hiding, and what does he do? What does he do after getting plastic surgery and changing his name and going into hiding? He leads a protest movement that puts his picture on the front page of the paper. And I always think about that when I think about Gene and how you can't suck up who you are. I mean, you can, but it's not good for you, and it's hard.
Yeah, you can only be Henry Hill getting the paper for so long before you got
Right.
before you feel that temptation again.
Yeah, I mean, look at Henry Hill.
Yeah,
I mean,
as I sort of continue the highlights of season 5 here that I love, I mean, the episode of Bagman was such a riveting episode to watch. Was that the most physically punishing sequence, that action scene in the desert? Was that to that point anyway? Was that the toughest sequence to pull off in your career?
walking around in the desert for 14 days in 112-degree heat. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm sweating in my apartment asking the question.
Yeah, it was tough. There are scenes that are very emotional and kind of about impacted emotion that we see occasionally in Better Call Saul. He's got a lot of feelings left over from his childhood that are welling up inside him and that he's tamping down, but occasionally it all comes to a head. Those are challenging scenes to do. But yeah, wandering the desert was really hard, physically really hard, and dangerous for everybody involved, the crew and the cast, But we took a lot of precautions and we figured it out eventually. It took a few days, but we got it under control.
I loved the sort of reunion scene, or I guess it was really your first interaction with Hank and Steve that we got to see in season 5. How much fun was that to just kind of pull off, because you get to see them again? Do you go back to Breaking Bad to kind of study your interactions that took place after that?
I feel like the Saul I played in Breaking Bad is not hard for me to access. He is not he's fun as hell. He's a whole bunch of ticks and inspirations, and I can just grab a hold of that very easily. So I don't have to study that guy. I do have to study Jimmy. Jimmy's got a lot more going on. He's got a lot more feelings, a lot more, basically more psychology at work, more voices in his head pulling him in different directions. Saul is easy. Saul's a front. He's just a front, and he's selfish, and that's the bottom line. It's like, what do I need to get? What do I need to say or do to get what I want to get out of you? And that's that's everything that's happening. That's the only thing that's happening.
Yeah, and as we wrap things up on the finale, I mean, the finale of the show, where are your emotions at? Is there relief? Is there excitement? Or is there trepidation? Do you do anything special when the season finale airs coming up?
I think it will be a big moment for me to watch that finale. I haven't really said goodbye to the character yet. I've had this guy in my life for 12 years. I've had obviously some pretty big breaks in there in between seasons, even in between the shows. So I'm very used to having a break and then going back to him. I think it'll only be on seeing that final episode, the finale, that I'll feel like, oh wow, that's it.
Well, you know what they say. The wicked flee when no man pursueth.
You think we're wicked?
I got a couple fun questions, and I'll start with sort of like an overarching question about your character, Gus Fring. How is he able to stay two steps ahead of everyone else. So why do you think it is that he's able to read people so well?
Well, he's, in many ways evolved in a different direction than most human beings. He understands himself on a level that's beyond. He knows when he's has anxiety, impatient, and frustrated, but he also can put himself in other people's shoes and think about what they might do and what options they have at their disposal. He has more options at his disposal, and he doesn't show his hand even to those who work for him so diligently. And that's what puts you ahead, because he knows what he wants in the end. And he knows it's going to be a step back, one step back, two steps back, but four steps forward when the time comes.
Yeah, he reminds me of like a Magic or a Larry in the NBA, where they just see the court and they see two steps ahead of everything, and they're not the fastest, they're not the quickest, but they just know what's going to happen. The stoicism is also something that's really intriguing to me, because you and the character Mike, played by Jonathan Banks, are the two most stoic characters in the entire show. So what do you think Gus understands about Mike and his mentality?
He understands that Mike is a worker bee. He understands that Mike could be a very formidable opponent for him, but Mike is someone who wants to be told. He wants also for his opinion to be heard. If you saw episode 1 and 2 of season 6, Mike starts to speak up a little bit in a way that has us as an audience understand, even though he's stoic, he has feelings. Oh, and Gus sees that. And then he has to limit how he interacts with Mike, because Mike has gotten close to him, not the first time, to someone that could compromise all of our freedom, all of our family. So I think it's the mutual it's a mutual respect that he has for Mike, until Mike shows his hand in regard to Nacho Varga, that Gus has to go, oh, okay, he is in too deep, giving a guy credit for things that he should have credit for, that I feel as Gustavo Fring as well, but that aren't going to help the organization.
So as far as you, an actor, and Jonathan Banks, and those wonderful scenes y'all have together, can you sort of give me a bird's eye view, take me inside of what those conversations are like before you have a crucial scene? What's that interaction from the actor's perspective?
I love Jonathan. Jonathan wants to get it done, so do I. And so if there's some moments where we have minimal conversations about certain things, and other moments where we look at each other and we literally, this season, I'm not going to talk about this today. And I go, I feel the same way. We are so much on the same page and have the same style of working that, oh, we should talk about this. So it's amazing how in concert we are. And sometimes when he doesn't want to talk, I push him, because I'm Gustavo Fring, and I'm preparing myself for the camera rolling. And even though he says, I don't want to talk about this, I start talking about it just to piss him off, because he can be a crotchety dude. And as such, you see that in Mike. He doesn't suffer fools. Jonathan is a smart man. And so, but I am as well. And so I like to play with him in a way that is reminiscent, or that is kind of reflective of what Gus does, but in a more playful fashion. And then I just turn off the faucet when I have to. And that look I give him says, oh, so you're not going to hit your mark. You're going to be in front of your mark? Okay. If you're going to be in front of your mark, I'm going to be here. In my mind, I just do it. And the cameraman goes, Jonathan, could you go a little to your left? Well, I'm on my mark. And yeah. And I know, and I speak right up and go, yeah, I'm not on mine for a reason. Because last take, you weren't on yours. So, you know what I mean? And I just push the envelope, which I think he acknowledges and realizes, and so do I, that it's a playful little game that gets serious when we drop into character, and it works.
Hey, if I'm the director, if I'm the DP, y'all are the two people. I'm not telling you where your mark is. It's like you don't do what you want to do. I do not want to get in the way of this process. I did get to check out a couple of the episodes for season 6, and even in the season 6 trailer, we see that there's going to be a meeting between Gustavo and Hector Salamanca. What is going into that conversation? What do you see Gus's mentality as being as it relates to Hector?
Look, Gus, why would they meet again? Right? Why? I'm asking you that question. Well, I would imagine that there's something that Hector wants to know. I would imagine that there's something that Gustavo needs to know to figure out what his next moves might be. And that takes looking into a man's eyes. And seeing where that person, Gus's perception is off the charts. He reads people like no other. I do it in my own life because I take in everything. It's a hypervigilance that Gustavo has. And the only way you can get that answer is to look at someone in the face. And you know what? Mark Margolis is a great actor, can hide everything. And Gus is also a great poker player and can hide everything. But somewhere in that meeting, you're gonna as an audience be so excited to either see it or not and have a clue or not. This show, man, it's mind-boggling how it keeps you on the edge of your seat. In season 6, Gustavo Fring has to be the greatest actor of all time.
It really does. It's an actor within an actor. And so now you just got me salivating at the possibility, thinking that it's not just Hector and Gustavo who have that meeting of the minds, but it's also you and Mark as actors who are maybe playing a little bit of poker with one another in that scene.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. The audience is going to be so excited by it and you're going to want to know, did he get his answer? On both characters' behalf. Did Hector get his answer? Did Gus get his answer? And you're going to be strung out and you're going to have to watch a little more. And then it's going to hit you. Oh my God, he knew exactly what that answer was, and he got confirmation or not.
I was reading an interview that you had done a couple of years ago. You were talking about the character of Gus, and you said something that really stuck with me, that you never saw him as being a truly evil character. You don't see a character as being truly evil, but maybe misunderstood. So what do you think we misunderstand, or maybe the characters in the show misunderstand about Gus and where he's coming from?
I think we have to be reminded of the story he tells Hector in the hospital. I think it's back in season 4, that tells you about his previous life. Like, all right, so Gus, he grew up poor. He had to figure it out. He had to take care of himself and his family. He became fierce. The coyote, the whole story about this animal, how he was compassionate, took care of it, all these things. That tells you a lot about him. He came from a place of, in a way, vulnerability and not having what he always wanted. So for me, the analogy is, he's that part of him tapped into a part of me that is the little kid who didn't get what he wanted. He didn't get taken care of. He had to fight for everything he has. Screw you. And then you're going to sit here and you're going to tell me you're going to take credit for me being who I am. No, I laid that down. Every part of it. I figured this out. So when you think about Gus in that way, it's like, holy, he's taking responsibility. I think for me, I have to find the humanity in a character I play, because that's what you relate to as a human being. Like, what decision would you make? He's making the decisions that come out of his past, and he's making those decisions in his present, and he's making those decisions for his future.
That's part of your gig, is sending people into scary spots, like such as with Nacho. So I'm just curious how Gus feels about that. Does Gus feel empathy for these people? Is it just they're expendable and they're just means to an end?
They're expendable for Lalo Salamanca. I hate that bastard. He doesn't care about human life. He doesn't care about people. Gustavo does. Yeah, he's not going to show you every time. Like Mike is saying, hey, the kid did us a solid. F that kid. Excuse me. That kid didn't do us a solid. He played the wrong cards and he hung himself. Right. And Does Gus feel for him? Yes, of course. Does he know the kid loves his father? He's a good kid and all that? Yes. But he made decisions against against Gus when he decided that he was going to kill Hector Salamanca. And that pissed Gus off. That was reserved for Gus for this long-standing hatred he had for Hector. So you didn't come to the boss and confine in the mastermind. Too bad. Does Gus feel for him? Yes. He puts all these people in situations where they're going to be compromised. But you know what? That's what a good chess player does. That's why you have pawns.
He feels, but he still has to get checkmate at some point.
It's the long game. It's the end game. Gus is a mastermind. And yes, he does things that you may think are cold and brutal, but you know what? Those things keep him alive to be able to run the big operation that he's eventually going to run.
From Breaking Bad to Better Call Saul, have you learned anything new about Gus? Was the character already there and fully formed in Breaking Bad, or do you feel like you've uncovered some new layers of your character?
I feel in this season 6, I've uncovered so many new layers that when I go in to do some additional sound recording, digital recording, I go, oh no, wait, I want to reshoot that. No, that's to this or to that. And then I go, oh, no, this is not that guy you used to play in Breaking Bad. Like, I want to control the chaos. I want to be the big head honcho. I want to be the guy you listen to. I want to be the guy that I'm the be all and last word. You know, in episode 6 of Better Call Saul, that's not always the case for Gus. And he's got to figure out a way. It's a new and different Gus, and I'm so pleased to have been able and proud. That's what it's like to be an actor, to figure out and how to be present always and deal with what you're given.
I'll let you go with this. I just ask you to complete this sentence. When you read the script for the final episode of this show, what was your reaction?
I was speechless. I was absolutely speechless. How could you do this? What brilliant mind thought up this ending?
Who's here to see Saul Goodman? You're the guy, right? What guy's that?
Very excited about season 6. But I want to start with that season 5 finale. It was so intense for both of y'all, really. Michael, I want to start with you because we always know Nacho to be so like cool and calm and collected, but we saw real dread there at the end of this past season. Where do you go for inspiration? How is that, as an actor, how are you able to show that after you showed so little with your poker face leading up to that?
Oh, thank you so much, man. I mean, that scene is all about loyalty. You know, he declares his utmost loyalty to Mike Ehrmantraut. You know, Nacho's a character who's trying to break good. He's probably the only character who's trying to break good in the whole Breaking Bad universe, and maybe Jesse Pinkman as well. And and in that final season, he declares his cards, and there's no more running because he knows that now the whole world, everybody in that Salamanca territory is going to know that he works for Gus and that he's a double agent. And in that moment, he puts everything on the line. That's that cliffhanger. That's that feeling of saying, I'm loyal to the one guy I know has a moral core in this whole world, one guy who's virtuous, who doesn't want to see innocent people die, and that's Mike Ehrmantraut. And I believe him and I are made of the same cloth, are cut from the same cloth. And he puts everything on the line in that trusting relationship. That's what that was.
Yeah, and you talk about mayhem, Tony. You certainly got a lot with that shootout. It was amazing to watch unfold. How much fun or challenging as an actor is it to have an action sequence like that closes out a season?
It was great. Somebody that interviewed us today said that that reminded him of Kevin McAllister in Home Alone meets John Wick. Because the frying pan and everything. It was great, man. It was super fun. You know, these guys, what they do is it's like Mike was saying, this they take their time. You know, they don't rush to put everything up on the screen. And then when the hits the fan, they really go all in for it. You know, I mean, even that tunnel, man. They created this huge tunnel in one of the back lots. and they had this long arm with the camera at the end, and it was just like, all right, get in the tunnel and just go as fast as you can so that the camera's chasing you. And I mean, that thing was humongous. It was super long. It was amazing that they did all that just for that one little moment.
And some of my favorite scenes from the past season were with Nacho and Lalo, where we know Nacho is a mole, but your character, Tony, isn't aware yet. I'm just curious, as actors, leading into those conversations, into those scenes, what are y'all's conversations like about how to play those roles?
I don't think we talked about it at all, right, Tony? Did we ever talk? I don't think we ever had a conversation about that at all. I know that, like, on the Bob and Ray side, they really like to rehearse. But in the cartel world, man, no one rehearses.
They don't tell us anything, man. They don't tell us anything. The way that I look at it sometimes, it's like, it's like life. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, So, you don't know where your character is going. So you kind of just live for the moment,
Yeah. And it's a ping pong too, between the actors and the writers. That Vince and Peter are such unbelievable structural guys. They know exactly what they want, but they also allow the actors to give their own interpretation and infuse so much of the life of the character in the silences. Like a character like Nacho barely speaks. So they allow you to do a lot, and then they actually kind of go back and ping pong off of what you're doing. So it's like a back and forth between what you're doing in front of the cameras and what the writers are seeing. And so there's a nice dance like that as well, which makes it exciting.
This is fascinating then for you, Tony, because you had this tremendous scene. It gets pretty tense between Jimmy and Kim. So they love to rehearse. And then you just kind of come in freewheel. And what was filming that scene like? Were there a lot of rehearsals for that? Or did you just kind of have the cameras roll and go for it?
Yeah, no, you mean the scene where we're in the apartment, in Jim's apartment? Yeah, no, we rehearsed that. Tom Schnauz wrote and directed that episode. And Tom is brilliant. He's so good at what he does, and he's so great. And we rehearsed that like a day before, maybe a couple of days before, I don't remember. But I mean, we showed up there and we did like the whole thing, and he wanted to see how everything. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's like I said before, it's a little bit like theater. You get into it, you find things, you see where you're going to stand, you see where this is going, so that when you show up there on the set, you have a little bit more of an idea of what you're doing and where you're going. So I mean, it was great. I mean, also I think it made a difference. I think it made that scene that much better. The fact that we had time to kind of settle into it and see how, because Tom was very clear in kind of what he wanted. Like there was even a moment, like I think when she's yelling at me and yelling back at me or something, where I'm staring at her, and Tom was like, I want you to stare at her for a long time, man. Like just stand there and stare at her. So I'd stare at her, and then I'd walk out and go, no, longer, man. Just stare at her. Like you don't know what the hell, like you, the audience, don't know if he's just going to pull out a gun and shoot her in the face, which once you see it, you're like, that was good, man. That was great. I would have just walked out right away, and it's sort of those little things that rehearsals really make a difference.
You're so great with your verbiage. And then Michael, you mentioned earlier that Nacho really doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue. You're doing a lot of this stuff just with your eyes, with your motions. And so as we look into season 6 a little bit, you're pretty much on the run. So how do you, what's going on in Nacho's mind, I guess, as we kick off season 6?
Wow. Well, as far as the acting is concerned, it was a great lesson in being. The character of Nacho is unlike anything I've ever done. I come from the theater. I love doing Shakespeare, and it was all about like the more lines you had, the better it was, right? And with a character like Nacho, you learn to be and to live the experience. And that experience starts off in season 6. Like I said, man, the whole world's looking for him. Everybody in the cartel right now is looking for him. And he's a dangerous person. Whoever gets their hands on him first, whether it's the cartel or Gus, he's very, very liable now. He knows everything. He knows, the Salamanca knows what he's done. And if they find out that through him that Gus has done what he's done, that's World War III right there in the cartel world. So he's it's just heart pounding, man. It's a great cinema, dramatic, tense roller coaster.
And I'm so excited about how we wrap things up here in season 6. And so I did promise Tony that I wasn't going to ask any spoilers. I abhor spoilers. The words Star Wars are muted on my Twitter. My question for you,
good, man. You did good so far.
Here's the question: is when you get that script for the final episode and you read it and you turn that last page, is it a word? Is it a sentence? What were y'all's reaction?
Personally, I was jumping up and down. I could not believe it. I mean, it was like, holy shit, what? Really? We're going to do this? Really? Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
I just gratitude. Honestly, I just feel, it takes a lot of hard work to be in a position like this, but it takes a lot of luck. And you ask yourself, why me? Why us? Why did we get this incredible opportunity? And I just felt incredibly grateful and responsible. I felt like I needed to give back and be as generous and as good to others as I could, because the world was very good to me, and I needed to give back. That's really how I felt.
Y'all ever think, because we get this prequel spinoff to Breaking Bad, what a prequel spinoff series would look like for either Lalo or for Nacho? I'll start with you, Michael. What does a prequel look like for Nacho? What is that show like?
Man, look, let people see season 6 first. As far as spinoffs are concerned, that's a Vince and Peter question. They're the masters of this world, and we trust them 100%. So whatever direction they want to go, we're behind them 100%. But let's get through season 6 first.
Tony, I guess I'll close out with you here. Your character is just so charismatic, but also has this very intimidating intensity. And I'm just curious if you look to, as far as inspiration goes, anybody throughout history, throughout entertainment, to kind of get a sense of where your character's coming from.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a Jules Winfield kind of idea about this character, from Sam Jackson from Pulp Fiction. Sort of this, I'm sorry, did I break your concentration kind of thing, Whereas this kind of guy who's kind of very easygoing. I'm the master, but then when it gets serious, he's scary as hell. So I kind of tried to tap into a bit of Jules Winfield as far as Lalo was concerned.
Salamanca's guy.
Are you building a case against Jimmy?
I'm just getting warmed up.
So I want to start with the trailer for season 6, where we see Kim ask Howard if he's building a case against Jimmy, and you say you're just getting warmed up. So in your eyes, are we about to see a new side of Howard in this season?
Well, Peter and Vince and that whole writing staff have given me as an actor such wonderful things to play with over the course of the seasons, right? I started off as Bader, according to, Jimmy, and then I put Kim in the cornfield and they hated me. And then the whole Chuck thing, I got a little sympathy, not a lot, but a little sympathy. But now with the, season 5 ending with Kim doing the pistols saying, let's go after Howard, I think people are like, ooh, watch out. But, to my mind, she's doing it in pajamas and they're not real guns. So really, what's going on? And Jimmy doesn't seem very on board. So that teaser, that got my curiosity too. I was like, well, what's going to go on there? And the great thing about this writing team is they've given Howard a bunch of different sides. So I think I can say without giving anything, well, you're definitely going to see a different side of Howard this time. We've had kind of a different side for the first 5 seasons. So, given what the events are going to happen, I think you'll definitely see a different color.
Yeah, and it's almost like I'm curious as to whether Howard is more concerned for Kim, the person, going down a wicked path, or do you think it's more he's just concerned about what Kim and now Jimmy / Saul can do if they team up against him?
Well, I mean, look, they've already thrown bowling balls on my Jaguar. They've already said, honestly, can there be any greater affront to Howard and his sensibilities? So I don't know if there's a fear factor in there, but I think the idea that Howard, I still make the argument, Howard has been the most consistent character in the entire universe of Better Call Saul. He has been trying to maintain a healthy law firm from the beginning, with those meddling McGill brothers and that crazy Kim Wexler. have just stirred the pot. And as of last season, I washed my hands of Jimmy, that great scene directed by Melissa Bernstein when I'm walking out of the courthouse and he's becoming unhinged. And I also wash my hands of, Kim as well. She, laughs at me when I tell him what's going on. So I don't know. If they listen to me, I'm like a dad on the show. I'm like, if you would just listen to me.
And you're such a routine oriented character that you're sort of like adult life goals. Like we want to have those sort of priorities, right? We want to take our vitamins every morning and work out and then go to work. But it makes those scenes all the more interesting where you do get a curveball thrown at you. Like when you and Jimmy are having that conversation about who's to blame for Chuck's death. What was that moment like for you, the actor, and then for Howard, the character?
Well, I mean, there's two things. One, through the course of the show, Howard does get to speak, but brevity is the soul of wit, is where he comes from. So with a lot of my scenes with Jimmy's much more loquacious. So as a practical matter, as an actor, I would sit there and I'd watch Bob, spin these yarns and do this stuff, which he's so good at. And so there was a reversal there, the opening season 4, when I come and have the big confession where I think I killed Chuck. And I realized I suffered just like out of, the first acting class I ever had. I'm going in and my friends and scene partners, Bob and Ray, are sitting there and they're being supportive by listening and watching me emote and work my way through this monologue. But of course, halfway through it, part of my brain goes, oh, they're so bored. They can't believe how bad of an actor you are. So kids out there who want to be actors, it never goes away. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't matter how big of a show you land, you're always going to have that little fairy on your shoulder that doubts your craft at some point. Speaking of craft, I've always been a huge fan of Michael McKean. What do you have like a favorite scene that you all got to do together? Because the interactions were so dynamic on the show.
I mean, I call him the mighty Michael McKean because he came locked and loaded for so many things. He's such an intelligent actor. And I say that because he's aware of everything that's happening. He's also very responsive. So if I'm throwing something, he immediately goes with this whole thing. I used to always think this, whenever I'd open up the script and I'd see it was a scene with me and McKean, I thought, oh, okay, at least it's going to be good because he's in it. And it felt like playing tennis with somebody who was a tennis master. I always felt like I came back away from the scene a little bit better. What a gift I had is the final scene that him and I had together. That entire day was shot in sequence. You almost never get that in television. And so it started with him in the conference room and me giving him the check. And then it moved into him leaving. And the last time I saw Michael McKean on the set of Better Call Saul, I was standing at HHM leading the applause as he stood down there and I walked off. And then literally the way production works, they're like, okay, that's it. All right, Patrick, went. So I stayed upstairs and went, and he got in the car and he went home, and I didn't see him for like 4 months. It was really art imitating life. But I tell you what, anybody who gets a chance to work alongside of him is lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan since Clue. When you think about, and now getting to work with Odenkirk so closely as well, I love the way that you all have this rivalry built, because I was talking to Bob about it, and it's almost like, I'm an NBA fan, so it's like the Lakers Kings early 2000s, where you had this young, upstart underdog, but then you had the established champ. That's you. So how do you see that rivalry, and how has it evolved as we get into season 6?
Wow, I think Howard has always suffered under the idea of like, is he worthy of the crown? Is he worthy of the H? Because Chuck was sort of the brains of the organization. But with Chuck being gone, I think Howard has been able to ascend into a sense of self. He's also allowed himself to grow. The whole going to therapy and figuring all that stuff, that's a big deal for somebody like Howard Hamlin. And look, what's great is that the writers also give him, he's become enlightened, but he's the kind of guy who's enlightened by putting namaste on his jag. So, that's he's trying the best he can. But I think at this point, the idea of him sort of being a father figure, which I've always thought Howard was looking out for Jimmy and looking out for Kim, at some point, even the best of parents have to say, I have done my best. And, I'm not going to give you any more. There's no more handouts. You got to fend for yourself.
Yeah, you got to wash your hands of it. I'm thinking now because we got spoiled with Breaking Bad, and then we got this amazing prequel. We got a Breaking Bad sort of sequel movie. I'm just curious what a Howard Hamlin prequel show would look like. Who was this guy in his formative years?
I think it was probably some ill-fitting clothing, playing a lot of tennis poorly. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, my socks were definitely halfway up the calf, and they never went down. I think Howard was probably a little more awkward. And the reason you talked about it before, there's an adulting that Howard has, and I think it's a learned thing. I think Howard has a stack of books like the Dale Carnegie sort of How to Win Friends and Influence People sort of thing. And Howard took to that. He took to the Four Agreements. He took to all of that stuff. And he lives it in the front of his brain, not deep in his heart. So he knows all the mannerisms and he knows what to do and how to dress and all that, but it doesn't come naturally. But in these last two seasons, I think the writers have given him a key to maybe give him hope for a second half of his life where things are a little easier, and maybe the tie isn't so. Maybe he loses the tie bar in the second half of his life.
I got one more question, and then I'll let you go. And it's a simple one. You can feel free to answer it however you want. What was your reaction to reading that final script? I'm not looking for spoilers. I'm just curious. What was your one word, one sentence, your emotional reaction to seeing what was on the page?
I guess satisfying. I don't know. There's a reason I'm an actor and not a writer and not an executive producer. I don't see the big picture. I don't know how people encompass seeing that, and then how you steer that ship home into a port where everyone gets off safely and happily, and I'm talking from an audience perspective, and yet these guys. And so when I read the final script and I turned the final page, there's that bittersweet moment of like, whew, well, that's how it ends. And yet I was like, that's the right way to end. Look at me getting all soft and emotional. You're going to love it. It rocks.